Hi there, my name's Annette with Sunbeam Fabric Art. Welcome to my channel. Today what I've got for you is a beautiful paper pieced block, and that block is my bird of the month, and it is called a Lark Sparrow. Very beautiful bird, and come along with me today and I'll show you how I put this block together. Okay, let's talk about this Lark Sparrow pattern. Here we've got the picture of the bird, and that line through it is, I had drawn a line through there myself. Okay, the second page is the sections. This guy doesn't have a lot of sections, so we've got E, F, G, and H making this part, and those will just be sewed to I, D, C, and B will be sewed together, and then add on A. So that'll be pretty easy to do. Here's the instructions. I printed out, this pattern includes several pages of the pattern with no numbers. That is because some of these places around the eye, the number obscures the pattern, and I'll show you what I mean here in a second. Here you can see side by side the eye, same piece, but with the numbers you can kind of tell there's a 1, 2, and 3 there, and 4 and 5, but it's a lot easier to see without the numbers, so it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So a little bit easier to see without those numbers crammed in. This one looks like it'll be okay. But it also is nice to have a backup set too. Okay, here are the fabrics I have chosen for this bird. I've got a light, medium, and dark gray fabric. Now this light is like an ombre fabric, so it goes from really, really light to really, really dark. But I'm going to pick out the part for that light gray, and I only need that light gray in about 3 places. I'm going to pick out this little section here and cut that out. So we've got this will be the light gray, medium gray, dark gray. Then I need a little tiny bit of black for the eye, and what I'm going to do is cut around these polka dots and just get the teeny tiny bit of black that I need. So I don't have any black in my stash right now, just this is the darkest one I have. Then for the green and the brown, I picked out these guys. They are so pretty. They have like metallic gold flecks in them, and I thought, oh, that'll be really pretty. So I've got my fabrics. I'm ready to go. My first step in a paper pieced pattern is to cut the pieces apart, and then I will be cutting out the exact fabric needs for each section. For this pattern, there are 2 sections that overlap 2 pages. To put those together, I cut a jagged line where I can still see the line where these are going to match up. And then matching that straight line and then the outside dotted lines, I tape that piece together. Now it's time to cut out the fabrics for each section, and when your pattern piece is printed side up, your fabric to match the right size should be wrong side up. And once I have all the section fabrics cut out, I have a nice little pile ready to take to my sewing machine. If you're sewing on a paper pattern, you're going to want to use a 1.8 stitch length or less. Well, let's get started and put one of these sections together. It is a section that has an eye in the center, some white, some brown, and some green, and I've got all the pieces cut out and ready to go. Step 1, I put piece 1 and piece 2 right sides together. Then I place those on the back side of my printed pattern so that the edge I'm going to be sewing overlaps the stitch line on the front of the pattern. Next, I stitch that seam on the line. I stitched 2 to 3 extra stitches at the beginning and the end of the line. Next, I trim excess threads. Normally I will trim off excess bulk, but in this case I didn't have any excess bulk because it was the very first 2 pieces. I will usually press the seam open, but in this case finger pressing worked just fine, so I went on to piece 3. So I'm finding the line between piece 2 and piece 3. Rather than try and figure out where this fabric was supposed to go, I folded on the stitch line and then I trimmed about 1/4 inch of bulk away, and then it was super easy to see where piece 3 will go right sides together, and then I can stitch that line. I cut away the excess thread. I finger pressed that fabric open, and then it was time to take a look at piece 4. In this case, it was pretty easy to see exactly where that piece 4 was going to go, so I didn't worry about trimming away the excess bulk immediately. I trimmed away the threads, then I folded on that stitch line and I trimmed away that excess bulk. Finger pressing was still working well for me, so I went ahead and finger pressed that seam open, and then I grabbed my next piece to add. It was time to add piece 5, and what I did was place that right sides together with the back of the unit. I made sure it overlapped at least 1/4 inch from the line I was going to be stitching on. Once the piece is stitched, I trim excess threads. Then I fold back on that seam line, trim away excess bulk. And last, I will press that seam open. I've skipped ahead here to the last couple of pieces. We're going to take the next piece, place it right sides together with the back of the unit. We're going to make sure that it overlaps the stitch line at least 1/4 inch. Then we'll stitch that seam. We'll trim excess thread, we'll fold on the stitch line, trim away excess bulk, and then press that seam open. And here we are to the last piece of this section. It's a green piece. I'm going to place it right sides together with the back of the unit. Make sure the angled line is going to overlap my stitch line by at least 1/4 inch. Then we will stitch the seam. We will trim away excess thread. I'll fold back on that stitch line, trim away excess bulk, and then I will press that seam open. Once all the sections are completed, I trim on the dotted line of all the pieces. Some small pieces I feel comfortable trimming by hand. Others I will use my cutting mat and a ruler and a rotary cutter to trim more precisely. With all the sections together, now it's just a matter of following the instructions to put B and C together, add D, put E, F, G, and H together, add I, and last add A. So here you see I'm taking piece B and piece C and placing those together right side up and kind of making sure I'm in the right place and where these are going to line up at. Then I will grab some clips, clip these two pieces together. I will verify that it looks good, and once everything looks good, I will stitch on the line to join these two pieces together. I like to trim off excess threads after I stitch a couple of pieces together. I also like to tear away any paper that is going to be encased in a third seam. So I've just sewn these two seams together. If I sew another piece on the side of this, some of that paper is going to be so deep down I'm not going to be able to get it out. So I like to trim or tear away some of this paper that I'm not going to need to match up to another piece. After that's done, I go ahead and press the seam. The next piece I'm joining on is pretty long, and there's really only one matching place or two where the feathers on the back and the white come together. I'm using my clips, and then I double check and make sure that when I stitch this line, what I think is going to match is really going to match. I don't want the back of this bird to be off. I want this to match up really well. Once I've finished stitching, I will trim away excess thread. Then I will tear off any paper that is going to be encased in an additional seam just to get it out of the way, and then I will press that seam open. Following my instructions, I take the next two pieces that need to be joined together. I'll use clips to join these two pieces together and verify that everything looks good, and then take it to the sewing machine. I trim the excess thread and trim any paper I don't think I'm going to need and that I don't want to get buried in a third seam. When it looks good, I will press that seam open. Now I'm going to join on the next piece, and this one is kind of important. I need to match up the eye because the bottom half of the eye is on one piece and the top half of the eye is on another piece. So I'm going to be very carefully clipping and making sure this eye is going to come together where it should. Once that's stitched, I trim the excess thread away. I tear off any paper that I don't want to be encased in an additional seam. And last, I'll press that seam open. I continued following my instructions, and I've gotten to where the top of the block is almost complete. This pattern took me a total of about 3 hours and 50 minutes to assemble, so just a little bit under 4 hours. It turned out just beautiful. I love the fabrics I used, and I can't wait to use it in a finished project someday. Thanks for coming along with me today for this foundation paper pieced bird, the Lark Sparrow, and I hope to see you back again real soon.